Ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure, it is my great pleasure to be here and address such an expert group. And I thank Professor Ravi Naidu for the opportunity. There are a few issues being addressed by any other congregation in Australia today that are more important than the discussions hosted here for two key reasons. One, environmental externalities. We either get our energy strategy right or we're punished for it if we get it wrong. Two, the energy is at the heart of any society, and efficient energy is integral to our economic success. These are simple, self-evident truths. What's not simple is appropriately balancing both considerations into an energy solution. In this debate, we hear contrasting views advocating variously on how that energy solution should look in Australia. Well, any wise policy position does not take a fundamentalist approach. A wise policy position looks at this not as a question of what is the right energy source, but what is the right balance of energy sources. That's because the combined effects of the technical limitations of renewables and the environmental externalities of fossil fuels means no single energy source in our arsenal today reigns supreme. Our task in government is to obviously get that balance right. Now, I'm here today because I've taken a unilateral position in this energy discussion, but I didn't take that position because of reasons of energy policy. South Australia faces economic challenges beyond those of any other mainland state, and often we manage to beat Tasmania in our economic challenges. Last week, the Australian Bureau of Statistics announced our state's highest unemployment rate in 14 years. Our youth unemployment figures are just ridiculous. The state government has tried all manner of fixes, and yet, despite that, we are where we are. Against the background of our economic malaise, our national debates about energy policy, the future of our coal export industry that makes us a global energy superpower, and the environmental impact of all of this. But there is another option, an option that delivers cheap, clean and reliable power, and you all know where I'm going with this. It's an option that has been in use for some cumulative 15,000 years in more than 30 countries, but from which we exclude ourselves. Indeed, we and Italy are the only two nations in the G20 that are not nuclear powered. It's an option that has averted an estimated 1.8 million deaths by reducing particulate pollution and is predicted to save 7 million more in the next 40 years or so. Ladies and gentlemen, nuclear power is an option that provides reliable, cheap baseload power while producing life cycle emissions comparable to renewables. These are excellent attributes for an energy producing technology, but none of the reason that brought me here first. What got my attention are the economic benefits a nuclear industry could deliver to this state, my home state and your home state, for many of you. Referring to economic benefits and nuclear in the same sentence can raise the brows of those whose involvement in this space goes back for some time. You are most accustomed to thinking about nuclear reactors costing money, not making them. Nuclear reactors are expensive after all, and they haven't been in and of themselves profit-producing entities. So let me explain briefly. My submission to the South Australian Royal Commission into the nuclear fuel cycle will propose that South Australia stakes its claim in the global spent nuclear fuel recycling industry. Worldwide, there is more than 250,000 tonnes of spent uranium looking for a home, and many countries willing to pay handsomely to a state that provides it. I've met with those states and the demand is very real, ladies and gentlemen. If we move to take custody of and recycle spent nuclear fuel, we could generate significant revenues and extremely cheap electricity for the benefit of South Australians, citizens and businesses. The modelling I've seen shows a range of possibilities, including the generation of enough electricity to meet the needs of the state of South Australia and the revenues of the recycling sufficient to supplant the state's burgeoning $4.4+ billion worth of state taxes. Front-loading the revenue is the model. You may not know that South Australians offer a very high degree of public support for nuclear industry, with more than 2/3 of those polled revealing active endorsement or a neutral sentiment at least. Indeed, Cameron's own newspaper did a poll recently which was overwhelmingly in favour of an interest, an ongoing interest in this space. Now, traditionally, the nuclear issue has been rather a politically charged one. People familiar with the history of politics have questioned the political sense of me going out on it. Well, that's changed. In testing the waters for this proposal early, I was intrigued by the complete lack of opposition and instead the support it received even from the more youthful members of the Greens movement and from others who I'd expected to refuse to be persuaded. Federal Labor, getting into the politics of it, Federal Labor has also remained remarkably quiet on this subject since an announcement of the Royal Commission by their state Labor cousins. Science and economics are not the argument here, and I believe the Royal Commission will bear that out. Science and economics are not the argument here. The single remaining hurdle Australia must defeat in order to realise its nuclear future is a political one. In that regard, South Australia's Royal Commission presents a never-before-seen opportunity. There is, for the first time, a bipartisan sentiment attached to the nuclear debate in Australia. Now, I'm happy to step back and have faith in that process. I am confident the Royal Commission will validate the scientific and economic virtues of a nuclear South Australia, and I'm just as confident that the South Australian Government will be unable to refuse the Royal Commission recommendation that it offers a safe, clean, cheap and plentiful energy while potentially delivering an economic advantage to our state so profound it could turn South Australia into a special economic zone by stealth. Ladies and gentlemen, key to the successful deployment of a nuclear industry in our state is consensus. That is the key, consensus. We need to be sure that the ordinary reasonable is on side. That is, of course, part of the rationale behind calling a Royal Commission, which offers a broad community opportunity for public discussion and ultimately informed decision making. That's where experts like you and events like this play such an important role. We need all our ideas tested, and experts like you, whether for or against, do that in forums like this one. To that end, it's important that supporters for the model that I've outlined voice that support. And if you have a different view, ideally want to hear from you personally. We need that kind of discussion and that kind of dialogue to take place so that at the end of this process we reach a consensus informed by science. And with that, I thank you very much for you all having me, giving me the great honour of closing the day, which I'm sorry that I haven't been here for you to experience. Today we're sitting, and obviously the Canberra's work is never done. I'll be back there at 9 o'clock tonight. So thank you all very much, and I close your forum here today. Thank you.